yet you won't utter a word of criticism against him. Why can't you be honest and tell us what you really think of how he led the Labour Party?
We need to bear in mind we've lost 4 in a row.
But this is the one you really lost.
Oh, no, we really did. And I went out with 44 campaigning teams, and that discussion was there in every team, in every
So why not a
constituency.
word of criticism of the man who led you to that defeat?
The overload of the manifesto, people felt there was too much in it. And I'm sad to say, in a number of areas, anti-Semitism came up. So the leadership did come up.
No.
Ever seen a politician squirm under pressure? Keir Starmer's interview with Andrew Neil is a masterclass in discomfort. As Neil fires off question after question, Starmer's confident facade crumbled. Before we move on, I'd like to ask you a small favor. If you appreciate this content, please take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Over 98% of you watch the videos without subscribing. It costs you nothing, but it makes a huge difference to us. So did you click the subscribe button? Great. Thank you so much. Now, back to the video. Watch as the Labour leader struggles to explain his biggest donors and flip-flops on key policy. It's a political bloodbath you won't want to miss. Andrew Neil's reputation as a political interrogator is legendary. When he sits down with Labour leader Keir Starmer, viewers brace for fireworks.
Number one, you say,
Yeah.
you won't criticise it.
Well, it's not I won't criticise him. Jeremy...
But you haven't.
Well, Jeremy is stepping down. We're now asking the question who should be the next leader of the Labour Party, and I'm trying to answer that question.
Charlie Faulkner, fellow Labour lawyer, he's known you for years.
I know Charlie very well, yeah.
Yeah, he says, and he knows you very well, and he says the truth is you were, quote, appalled by the awfulness of the Corbyn leadership.
I don't speak outside the shadow cabinet.
Were you appalled
We
by the awfulness of Mr. Corbyn?
We obviously got it very wrong in that general election. Jeremy has stepped down.
Neil's track record of dismantling politicians' arguments sets the stage for a high-stakes encounter. Starmer strides into the interview studio, exuding confidence. He's armed with an arsenal of prepared responses, ready to showcase his leadership credentials. But Neil isn't one to follow a script. The seasoned journalist opens with a curveball question that catches Starmer completely off guard. In an instant, the crack in Starmer's polished facade becomes visible. His eyes widen slightly, and there's a brief but telling pause before he attempts to regain his footing. What unfolds next is less an interview and more a psychological chess match. Neil, ever the grandmaster, seems to anticipate Starmer's moves before he makes them. Each time the Labour leader tries to pivot or redirect, Neil counters with laser-focused follow-ups that demand specifics. Starmer's attempts to steer the conversation to safer ground fall flat. When he tries to speak in broad strokes about Labour's vision, Neil presses for concrete details. The politician's rehearsed talking points crumble under the weight of Neil's relentless pursuit of clarity. The turning point comes when Neil hones in on Labour's campaign funding. With surgical precision, he exposes inconsistencies in Starmer's claims. The Labour leader's explanations grow increasingly convoluted as Neil methodically dismantles each justification. As the interview progresses, the ground beneath Starmer's feet seems to shift. His initial poise gives way to visible discomfort. He fidgets in his seat, his responses become more hesitant, and the confident facade he entered with has all but evaporated.
Tell you what a lot of people, because you're reluctant to say what Charlie Faulkner thinks you think, and that is you're reluctant because a large part of the Labour membership still worships Jeremy Corbyn.
I worked well with him. He actually led us through some really difficult times. I had disputes with Jeremy, things I didn't agree with him on, and we either had it out around the shadow cabinet table, or on occasion I went to his constituency office and we had a discussion there.
You cannot plan the future without understanding the past. And if you have nothing bad to say about Mr. Corbyn's leadership now, why did you take part in the attempt to topple him as leader in 2016?
Neil's calm demeanor stands in stark contrast to Starmer's growing agitation. The interviewer maintains an air of cool detachment, even as his questions land like body blows. Starmer, meanwhile, struggles to maintain his composure, his frustration barely concealed beneath a thin veneer of political politeness. By the time Neil wraps up this segment of the interview, it's clear who's emerged victorious from this verbal sparring match. Starmer's inability to provide clear, consistent answers has left him looking evasive and unprepared. Neil, true to his reputation, has once again demonstrated why he's considered one of the most formidable interviewers in British politics. Just when Starmer thought he'd weathered the worst of Neil's questioning, the veteran journalist unleashes a new line of attack. Promises made, policies changed, and political alliances abandoned. Neil lays bare the inconsistencies in Starmer's record. Can the Labour leader salvage his credibility in the face of such damning evidence? As the interview progresses, Neil presents a carefully curated collection of Starmer's past statements. These aren't just minor gaffes or slip-ups. They're fundamental shifts in policy positions that leave Starmer squirming in his seat. The Labour leader's attempts to explain his evolving views fall flat as Neil methodically dissects each justification. Take the issue of nationalization, for instance. When pressed on whether specific industries would be included in Labour's manifesto, Starmer's responses are frustratingly vague. He dances around the question, refusing to commit to clear policies. It's a far cry from the bold promises he made earlier in his political career. But Neil isn't done. He turns his attention to university tuition fees, a hot-button issue for many Labour voters. Starmer had previously pledged to scrap these fees, but now he struggles to provide a clear commitment. Neil's insistence on specific answers only highlights Starmer's evasiveness, leaving viewers to wonder what happened to the decisive leader they thought they knew. Perhaps the most damaging exchange comes when Neil exposes Starmer's shifting stance on Jeremy Corbyn. Once praised as a close ally, Corbyn has become something of a political liability for Starmer. Neil pounces on this, questioning why Starmer initially supported Corbyn's leadership only to later distance himself and offer harsh criticisms. Starmer's attempts to justify this reversal come across as weak and opportunistic. As the interview reaches its climax, Neil zeroes in on Labour's housing policies. He highlights the contradiction between Starmer's claims and the government's failure to address public concerns about housing shortages for locals. Starmer's frustration becomes palpable as he struggles to defend his position, his earlier confidence now a distant memory. By the end of this brutal interrogation, Starmer appears visibly shaken. His carefully crafted image as a principled, consistent leader lies in tatters. Neil's relentless questioning has exposed a politician willing to shift his stance on key issues, leaving viewers to question whether any of Starmer's promises can be trusted. It's a masterclass in political journalism, demonstrating the vital role that tough, informed questioning plays in holding our leaders accountable. As the dust settles on this explosive interview, viewers are left pondering more than just policy disagreements. Starmer's performance has exposed the precarious tightrope politicians walk between consistency and adaptability. His struggle to reconcile past statements with current positions raises uncomfortable questions about political integrity. But let's not be naive. In a world of rapidly changing circumstances, is unwavering consistency always desirable? Or does effective leadership sometimes require the flexibility to evolve? Starmer's fumbles certainly don't inspire confidence, but they do highlight a broader challenge in modern politics. This encounter between Neil and Starmer serves as a stark reminder of the vital role journalism plays in holding our leaders accountable. It's a wake-up call for voters to demand greater transparency and to critically examine the promises politicians make. As we move forward, perhaps the real question isn't whether our leaders are perfectly consistent, but whether they can clearly explain and justify their evolving positions when put under pressure.